October 8th, 2006. A 27-year-old man sits down at his computer in his Brooklyn apartment, his fingers quietly tapping away on the keyboard. He's browsing chat rooms, a relatively new hobby during these early days of the internet. His screen name? Drumbase007. Maybe he's looking for conversation. Maybe he's looking for something more. But what he finds is a death sentence. Michael Sandy didn't know it, but he was walking straight into a trap. A trap that would exploit the internet's darkest capability: connection without identity, deception without consequence.
So back in 2006, the online dating scene was still pretty new and fairly unregulated. So you were talking to people online and not really knowing who was on the other end.
And by the time it was over, Michael would be lying on life support in a hospital bed. Michael Sandy was a young, soft-spoken black man who lived in the East Williamsburg neighborhood of Brooklyn. He was an interior designer for IKEA, working on visual displays for their Hicksville store. Friends described him as gentle, creative, and private, but online, he was more open.
It wasn't unusual for him to be adventurous and to meet people from the internet.
He was going out and talking to people online and going out to meet them.
He went to AOL chat rooms to connect with other gay men, mostly just looking for friendship, and sometimes something more. This side of his life, the part he kept online, was something he felt he had to keep hidden from his friends and family, because in 2006, being openly gay still came with danger. That night, Michael received a message from a user named Fisheye Fox. The message was casual. "Yo, do you blaze?" Michael replied, "Yeah, I blaze mad." It was an invitation to hang out, to smoke. But on the other side of that screen were four strangers: John Fox, Anthony Fortunato, Ilya Shurov, and Gary Timmons. And they weren't gay. They weren't looking for conversation. They were hunting. The group, teenagers from Long Island and Brooklyn, had come up with a plan: pose as a gay man in a chat room, lure someone out under the pretense of sex or weed, and rob him. But when they found Michael, robbery turned into something darker. The chat led Michael to a parking lot near Plum Beach, a known cruising spot off the Belt Parkway in Brooklyn. He pulled in around 10 p.m. expecting to meet the guy from the chat. Instead, John Fox approached him first, putting on a fake list to pass as gay. Then Fortunato joined. The moment seemed casual, until the others emerged. Michael was surrounded. They opened his car door, demanded his wallet, pushed him, punched him, and Michael ran. Desperate, he sprinted away from the car toward the highway, still holding his cell phone in one hand. Ilya Shurov chased after him, all while continuing to hit him. Then, Michael made a fatal mistake. He ran into traffic. Immediately, he was struck by a beige SUV going full speed. The driver never stopped. Michael's body was hurled onto the pavement. He suffered catastrophic head trauma. The attackers fled, but not before searching his pockets, robbing him of all he had left, while he laid there, dying in the street. Michael was rushed to Brookdale University Hospital. He was unconscious, badly brain damaged, and forced to be put on life support. Days passed. He turned 29 while in a coma. He never woke up. On October 13th, 2006, 5 days after the attack, his family made the decision to remove life support. Michael Sandy was pronounced dead. And just like that, a man who had never hurt anyone, who had simply been searching for connection, was gone. Police traced the attack quickly. They recovered Michael's computer and pulled the chat logs. The IP address led them to a dorm room at SUNY Maritime College. John Fox was arrested on October 10th, and his confession opened the floodgates. Soon, Anthony Fortunato, Ilya Shurov, and Gary Timmons were all in custody. Each played a role, each knew what they were doing, and none of them expected someone to die. But the law didn't care. Prosecutors charged them with second-degree murder, attempted robbery, and, for the first time in Brooklyn history, a hate crime. Because this wasn't just a random robbery. They had targeted Michael specifically because he was gay. The trial was emotional, shocking. Fortunato claimed he was secretly gay himself, that he didn't hate Michael. But the court wasn't swayed. Under New York law, a hate crime doesn't require hatred, only that the victim was selected based on their perceived sexual orientation. In the end, Fox was convicted of manslaughter and attempted robbery as a hate crime. Fortunato received the same. Shurov, arguably the most violent, pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to over 17 years. Timmons, the youngest, took a deal and served 4. Justice, but not peace.
The family is never going to be the same. Quite frankly, some of us are never going to be the same.
Heartless. There's no other one.
Michael Sandy's death left a hole in his community. His story became a rallying cry about the dangers of online anonymity. In 2008, artist Annie Elite released a song titled Just in Case, a tribute to Michael and others like him. His death became a symbol, but to his family and friends, he was so much more than that.
Michael is a wonderful human being from head to toe. He was kind and would do anything for anyone that had asked, and he was always there. When Michael entered the room, you knew he would always make any horrible day you had just melt away. I cherish that.
In another timeline, Michael might have logged off that night, but instead, this is the timeline we live in. And in this one, Michael Sandy never made it back, making him one of many disturbing early internet tragedies. The year was 2007. MySpace was booming, the iPhone had just launched, and America was in the midst of a digital revolution. But buried beneath the novelty of a rapidly expanding internet was something much darker. This is the story of one of the darkest encounters from the early internet, a tale of jealousy and deception as old as time that was carried out online for one of the first times ever. This is the death of Rebecca Klein and the lesbian love triangle case. Nicole and her partner, Rebecca Klein, had been together for nearly 7 years. On the outside, their life together in Villa Park, Illinois, appeared like any other suburban couples. Nicole worked for a cable company, while Becky was a 32-year-old respiratory therapist. Becky wanted to have kids someday, but Nicole, on the other hand, did not. Becky went as far as buying kids' toys, which she kept in a closet, despite them not having children. Aside from that, things had been going well between them, but slowly, over time, Nicole began spending more time alone in the basement where their computer was located. March 16, 2007. The day started off normally. Becky had left for work in the morning, but when Nicole received a call from Becky's boss around 11:30 a.m., he said that she failed to show up for her shift. This was very unlike her, as she was known to be very punctual. Nicole told the boss that Becky's phone stopped working for the past few days, a comment that Becky's boss found rather odd, considering he had spoken to her multiple times the previous 2 days, and she never once mentioned having troubles with her phone. She then called Becky's mom to see if she had heard from her daughter that morning. She hadn't. She then called Becky's father and sister. Neither of them had heard from Becky either. Growing concerned, Becky's mother called Nicole back, expressing her fears that something was terribly wrong. Nicole told her mom that she was going to drive around the block to look for Becky's van. A distinct white van with a logo printed on it that was hard to miss. Just after 1 p.m., she found Becky's work van parked on the street right around the corner from their house, and that's when Nicole called 911 to report Becky missing.
Did you already make a missing person report?
No, I'm going home to do it right now.
Is this a house or an apartment?
No, it's my house, but like the van is like right in front of my house, like right on the side. I just noticed it.
So her van is there with the keys in it?
Yeah, like it's not even like my house is a stop sign. It's like on the side of the street. And her boss called me at noon and was like, "Is she coming in today?" I'm like, "She left this morning to go to work."
So she's not inside the house or inside the van?
No, not at all.
Officers arrived to the scene promptly. They looked around in the garage and found Becky's work van sitting there with the doors unlocked and the keys still in the ignition. Her belongings were left in the front seat. Nicole claimed that she was trying to call Becky all day, but she wasn't picking up the phone, and as her house was searched, they noticed something sitting in the basement window. It was Becky's phone. Becky's sister told them that she had been over at their house the night before to help set up for a birthday party. When she left around 7 p.m., she tried calling Becky. No response. The following morning, She again tried calling Becky during her work commute, something the two did regularly. Again, no response. As the day and night passed with still no word from Becky, it became clear that something bad had happened to her. The following day, March 17th, investigators asked Nicole if they could search outside her home for any clues that could help find Becky, but she initially refused to cooperate. The police insisted they look around, to which she ultimately agreed to let them do the search. This interaction stuck out as being strange to the authorities, as Nicole had previously consented to them searching her house and garage the previous day. Regardless, the search began, and they immediately found some alarming clues. Cops noticed a latex glove in the lawn, and the other glove in a trash can nearby alongside some cleaning supplies. Inside, they noticed a jumbled mess of a comforter covered with clear duct tape. Then they moved to the garage. Parked there was Becky's vintage Mustang. It was coated in a layer of dust, except for one spot, a clear handprint, right near the handle to open the trunk. They asked Nicole for the keys to unlock the trunk, but she claimed she didn't know where they were, so they looked for a way in through the back seat of the car. Investigators managed to remove a speaker that allowed access into the trunk, and what they found was truly horrific. Lying there in a fetal position was Becky, with duct tape covering her eyes and mouth. She had been suffocated by a plastic bag, which was wrapped around her head so tightly that no air could get in or out. Medical examiners would go on to examine the contents of her stomach, and it was determined she had died about an hour and a half after her last meal. One can only wonder if she enjoyed that last meal with the woman she loved for 7 years, only to be betrayed by her in the worst way moments later. Authorities could not find any signs of forced entry into the home, pointing to Nicole as being a primary suspect. And what's even more shocking is that the web of lies was only just beginning to unravel. Authorities began questioning those closest to Becky. According to Becky's sister, in March of 2002, Becky tried to break up with Nicole, but ultimately decided not to after Nicole threatened to drink herself to death. And then, investigators searched Nicole's computer. It quickly became clear that throughout Becky and Nicole's relationship, she was unaware that her partner was living a lie, carefully curated behind the glow of a computer screen, because while Becky thought they were in a monogamous, committed relationship, Nicole was prowling MySpace under a false identity, seeking out other women, pretending to be someone she wasn't. She told one woman her name was Nicole Davis. She said she was single. She used an image of herself, smiling and clean cut, to lure in unsuspecting women. And eventually, she did just that. A young woman named Rose Sodaro. They brought Nicole in for questioning. She claimed she had gone out drinking with friends the night before Becky's disappearance, and not just any friends. One of them was Rose, the woman she had met online just days prior. Nicole had picked Rose up from the airport, while her girlfriend of 7 years was missing. It took 5 days from when Becky was reported missing until her lifeless body was found in her vintage Mustang. While Becky Klein lay dead in the trunk of her own car, Nicole Abusharif was out bowling. She had picked up Rose Sodaro from the airport and took her on a date. At no point did Nicole mention Becky was missing. In fact, she told Rose a series of carefully crafted lies meant to cast her as a woman of strength, tragedy, and terminal illness. She claimed she had once been a firefighter, stationed at Ground Zero during the September 11th attacks, that she had pulled charred bodies from the rubble, that she suffered lasting trauma from the horror she had seen. It wasn't true. None of it was. She told Rose she had terminal liver cancer, that her time was running out, and in a twisted flourish of drama, she drove Rose to a funeral home and told her they were there to pick out Nicole's casket. Every word was a fabrication, a means to manipulate, to paint herself as a tragic heroine deserving of pity and affection. Meanwhile, Becky's body remained locked in the trunk, cold and lifeless, less than a mile away. The web of lies unraveled quickly under police scrutiny.
You know what, Nicole? There's a lot of times when people are in situations happened, and they act out of desperation and out of confusion and not knowing what to do. And I'm not sitting here saying that you're a terrible person and a bad person. I think you're a really good person. I think you have a really good heart, okay? But what I think is that there was something that happened and it turned out bad, okay? And I'm not saying for that instant that things that happened weren't wrong, but they did happen. But what we're looking for here is not what the ultimate conclusion was. We're looking at what led up to this, what happened. And, Mom mentioned some things to us that you guys have had some problems in the past.
Forensics placed Becky's time of death on March 15th, just hours before Nicole picked up Rose for their bowling date. Her search history revealed she was looking for bondage materials, disturbing in light of the duct tape and plastic bag found on Becky's face. But Nicole wasn't the only one involved in obscuring the truth. A coworker of hers, 50-year-old Robert Edwards, was charged with obstruction of justice after lying to police during the early stages of the investigation. He had provided a false alibi for Nicole, claiming she had been elsewhere during the critical time of Becky's disappearance. Prosecutors later said that his deception had delayed the investigation significantly, wasting precious hours that could have led to Becky's discovery sooner. You may be thinking to yourself, why would this seemingly random man risk his own freedom for a woman who was not romantically interested in him at all? Well, it turns out Edwards may have had a different impression of his relationship with Nicole. He would go on to admit to police that he and Nicole were drug buddies who shared wild sex fantasies, despite there being no evidence that they had ever been intimate with each other. It appears Nicole may have just seen Edwards as a tool to carry out her evil plan. We may never know the real reason why he decided to lie for Nicole, whether blind loyalty, romantic infatuation, or manipulation by Nicole herself. But Edwards ultimately pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 120 days in jail. When police searched Nicole's house, they found duct tape and garbage bags, identical to the ones used on Becky. And then there were the text messages. Just hours after Becky's murder, Nicole sent Rose a message that read, "I'm finally free." But why? Why would someone murder the person they claimed to love for 7 years? At the trial, Nicole was adamant that she did not kill Becky. She admitted that she was a liar, however, and that much was self-evident. The trial was long, totaling over 8 days of testimonial from 30 witnesses and 150 pieces of physical evidence. Becky's parents, Jeff and Marilyn Klein, and her older sister, Melanie, attended the lengthy trial alongside many relatives and friends. The prosecution argued that Nicole's motive for killing Becky was to pursue a romantic relationship with another woman, and also to collect a life insurance policy of $400,000. And the evidence to support this theory was strong. Forensic experts found her finger and palm prints all over the roll of duct tape and garbage bag, and, perhaps most damning, her DNA was found on the bandanas that she gagged and blindfolded Becky with. On the night of the murder, Nicole and Rose partied and bowled in the south suburbs of Chicago. The two stayed at her Villa Park house afterward, with Becky's lifeless body lying there in the trunk just feet away. Disturbingly, Rose herself testified that Nicole had given her the key to Becky's vintage Mustang as a gift earlier that night. She had no clue that this was actually Becky's car. In fact, she was led to believe that Becky was Nicole's roommate, not her girlfriend of 7 years. Nicole took the witness stand for over 4 hours. She testified that she loved Becky, and claimed that the two were actually in an open relationship. According to her, Becky didn't mind her talking with Rose, as long as certain rules were followed. This was likely yet another lie, one of many lies that Nicole admitted to during the trial. She admitted to repeatedly lying to police, family, and friends about the fact she spent that night with Rose, but according to her, she did so to avoid opening herself up to scrutiny about her sex life and other intimate details. Nicole testified, "I was protecting Becky even though she's dead. I wanted to protect her name. It's nobody's business what we did behind bedroom doors." During cross-examination, Nicole admitted to profiting in a total of 8 insurance claims, from car accidents to workers' compensation. This was an abnormally high number of insurance claims, and one that painted her in a bad light, given Becky's life insurance policy. Nicole's countless lies that were exposed during the investigation were used against her to show how untrustworthy her own testimony is. Her online chats with Rose were presented to the jury, and when asked to explain why she lied about having cancer, she hand-waved it away by saying it was just a fantasy game they played. Nicole's defense team had their work cut out for them. They argued that it would have been physically impossible for Nicole to overpower Klein and dump her body into a trunk. They also said it isn't surprising that her fingerprints were found all over the crime scene, given the fact she lived there with Becky. The defense tried to use the fact that Nicole herself called 911 to report Becky missing as a way of proving her innocence. The defense attempted to argue diminished capacity, suggesting that Nicole's drinking and alleged mental health issues contributed to the crime, but the jury wasn't convinced. They deliberated for just 6 hours before finding her guilty of first-degree murder. She was sentenced to 50 years and ordered to serve every day of it at the Dwight Correctional Center in Nevada Township, Illinois. No parole, no chance of freedom, until she is eligible for release at 81 years old. Nicole showed little emotion as the sentence was read. Becky's family sat in silent pain as the verdict was read. Justice, yes, but no real comfort. Becky's father later told reporters that justice had finally been served, though nothing could bring his daughter back. January 12, 2003. A dimly lit room in Phoenix, Arizona. The hum of a computer fan echoes against silence. And on the other side of the screen, a 21-year-old man named Brandon Vedas sits alone, keyboard clacking, chat messages pinging, and a webcam broadcasting every moment to a room full of anonymous strangers. Brandon had logged into an IRC chat room, a virtual hangout for like-minded users who bonded over drugs, tech, and counterculture. His screen name was Ripper. A regular user in the shroomery.org community, Brandon wasn't new to pushing limits. He was known to experiment with substances. In his own words, this was just another weekend, but this night would be anything but ordinary. He typed, "I got a grip of drugs," and he wasn't lying. With his webcam on, Brandon began showcasing the assortment of substances laid out in front of him. Some users urged caution. Others egged him on. "That's a lot of Klonopin," one user warned, but Brandon laughed it off. He started with psilocybin mushrooms, then moved on to clonazepam, 8 milligrams. Then came methadone, 80 milligrams. He downed the entire bottle on camera, followed by propranolol, temazepam, Vicodin, and finally, some 151 proof rum. "Bottoms up," he said. According to his family, everything but the pot and rum were legally prescribed to him by a doctor. His mother was aware he was taking medications for his depression, but what she didn't know was that Brandon had been mixing medications for fun. His brother later said, "It's the ideal situation. It's legal and it's free, and most people assume that if a doctor's giving you something, it must be fine." However, Brandon wasn't like most people. He was keenly aware of the dangers of mixing drugs, so aware, in fact, that it was a point of pride for him. He bragged to other users in chat about his high tolerance, as if he was trying to prove a point. Sure, a high tolerance may have allowed him to take more than a normal person, but on this night, not even the highest of tolerances was going to save him. His mother was in the other room while he sat there downing more and more drugs. More users flooded into the chat. Those who had just tuned in to the stream were shocked by the huge dosage he had just taken, not realizing it was just one of many that he had consumed just minutes earlier. Brandon was creating a deadly concoction of drugs that was about to enter his system, like a ticking time bomb of his own doing, one that was about to go off in less than a half hour. You see, all of the drugs he was taking were considered downers, or depressants, a category of drug that suppresses your body's central nervous system, causing it to react slower, impairing judgment, and, at extreme doses, preventing you from being able to breathe altogether. Each of these drugs can be incredibly dangerous if not taken with the instructions given by the doctor, but when they're combined with other depressants at the same time, the danger increases exponentially. And as some users pointed out, the first handfuls of drugs he took that night hadn't even kicked in yet. Some viewers typed messages of concern. "Don't OD on us, Ripper. You're taking too much." But others saw entertainment. They wanted more. "Eat more. I want to see if you survive." This wasn't just voyeurism. It was digital detachment in its purest form, the kind that could only exist in the early internet, when usernames masked humanity and tragedy felt like fiction. But even Brandon himself could see how dangerous his decisions really were, as he typed instructions to give to the police to help find him. Even over text, his words were starting to slur together, all while the chat watched the drugs begin taking their toll on him. It appeared as if beneath all of the substances he had taken, fear began to set in. Brandon typed his phone number in the chat, in case anything goes wrong, in his words. His messages grew increasingly more concerning, as if he was secretly hoping someone would see his cries for help through his calm, collected appearance. At one point, 2 users, identified only by their screen names as Hast and Oya, realized things were spiraling. They typed, "I'm on the line with 911, but before the call could go through, others intervened. No, don't ruin the trip. He's fine." And just like that, the only potential lifeline was severed. As the chat room filled with nervous laughter and provocative dares, Brandon kept typing, "I told you I was hardcore." Those would be his last known words. Minutes later, silence. No more keystrokes, no more replies. As his webcam was recording all of this, it suddenly froze. Hours passed. The chat room emptied. The internet moved on, but Brandon didn't. The next morning, his mother found him slumped at the foot of his bed. By that point, he was already long gone. His computer still on, his webcam still open, and the chat log, a digital record of his final moments, still visible on the screen. The media wasted no time. They called it the first suicide on the internet. News outlets framed it as a dark milestone in digital history, a man who had live-streamed his own death for an audience of strangers. But was it really suicide? Researchers and online community members later analyzed every line of that night's chat log, and something didn't quite add up. There was no goodbye, no note, and no declaration of intent. One study by a University of Indiana researcher concluded that Brandon's words suggested not suicidal ideation, but reckless bravado. He thought he could handle it. He believed he was in control, and in some twisted way, so did his audience. This wasn't a planned death. It was a toxic cocktail of ego, escapism, and digital peer pressure. Brandon wasn't the first to die while the internet watched, and sadly, he won't be the last. But his case marked the beginning of a new kind of tragedy, one born from the collision of anonymity and apathy, where virtual bystanders are given a front row seat to real-life suffering. Today, his story remains a disturbing reminder of the darker corners of internet history, and the first of many disturbing encounters of the early internet. If you're new here, be sure to like the video and subscribe to Crime Bumps for more deep dives into the dark side of the internet. Be safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one.